Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Holly Bailey, and I am the Manager of Customer Success for Work Truck Solutions. And I will also be serving as your moderator for today's webinar, How Essential Buyers Are Shopping, and we'll be sharing some collected data and thoughts. So without further ado, I will go ahead and jump on in. So the first thing that I'd like to do is just go through a few housekeeping tips. First of all, we would love to have your questions through the webinar. Everyone is on the attendee list is muted right now. And so the best way to get in touch with us is to use the question feature that is available to you. If you just look at that orange arrow, there's a little question mark there. So that is from your view how you post a question. And we'll save some time by answering those questions at the end of the presentation. You can also download a copy of this presentation right now for reference. As you know, with so many people working from home and internet bandwidth challenges, there's the possibility that we could encounter some technical difficulties through the webinar. So we want to make sure that you have a copy of today's presentation available to you. Furthermore, the webinar is being recorded and it will be sent to you a few hours after the event. Now I'd just like to introduce you all to today's panelists. As I introduce each panelist, please go ahead and make your webcam visible for our attendees. First and foremost, it's my pleasure to welcome John McCammon. He is Vice President of Partnerships and Channel Development for Agilus. Agilus is a telematics company focused on serving small and mid-sized fleets. Specific to today's webinar, the Agilus GPS fleet tracking product, LinksUp, has served up much of the specific vertical data we will be exploring. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Holly.
All right. Next, I'd like to welcome our very own Nikki Wilson. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications here at Work Truck Solutions. She will be discussing buyer trends and how work truck buyers are shopping today. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Holly.
And last but certainly not least, I'd like to now turn over the webinar to our CEO, Catherine Schifferly. She will be discussing the latest industry news for essential business, as well as providing tips for dealers regarding the importance of speed and accuracy. Welcome, Catherine.
Thanks, Holly.
You bet.
So I think we need to just, I want to communicate with you that we've ended up with a lot of information and a lot of data. So we're going to move through this very quickly. And I'm so glad that Holly had expressed to you that you can download it because they're packed slides. And so we'll give you a high level overview and then you're going to want to look at them later. So let's just jump right in. I do believe that our news is very fresh. What's exciting to me is if we're looking at, in general, what's happening online and consuming content, for me, it's really kind of exciting to see that the bottom line here is that broadcast television and online video streaming is really developed a lot of screen time as primary for generations and genders. And I think that we're seeing that, you know, as families are spending more time together in the home, that's one of the silver linings around that. They're spending time looking at things together. I don't know how many of you have heard of Alignable, but they're the largest small business networking app online. And although they're not exactly the essential businesses that we're looking at, I thought it was very interesting to see that as of this week, 56% of them are still open and 43% of businesses in this kind of category have temporarily shut down. This is interesting information as we look at the verticals that we're going to be looking at in just a second. So Automotive. Automotive is taking a big hit. Our last webinar, we talked about how many dealerships had actually been shut down, precluded from selling. You can see the reflection of auto sales being down 46% in March. And there's a lot of creative ideas around cash for clunkers, getting up to speed and doing things online and making the whole experience with customers virtual. And we're even seeing March heavy-duty trailer orders down, because although there was an initial really big impact on transportation and shipping, that's kind of leveling out as well. And of course, a lot of uncertainty. The overall, in general, the hope is for a V-shaped recovery. It's a little different than previous impact times. And so Statista just this week published that they felt it would be about a -6% GDP drop, but a V-shaped recovery. So we all got our fingers crossed on that one. But this is some data that I really wanted to share with you today, because what this shows is, and it certainly uses our past big economic ditch, and how the difference was between retail vehicles, the passenger car production, and passenger car sales, which are the two lower lines, recovered off of after that, and how commercial recovered. We are very bullish about the concept that this is going to be a sharp V for the commercial space because of the demand. And so this is good news, and we know that there's still a lot of that we need to be able to see, but we're feeling very positive about that. So this now, we're looking at literally a survey of significant number of essential businesses that Links Up serves, and 85% of which are essential businesses, and this is hot off the survey press in just yesterday. So we're going to look into some specific verticals now. So out of all of the verticals that we're going to look at, landscaping, construction, field service, which is HVAC, electric, etc., and transportation, 89% of them are operational. 75% have made adjustments. That's certainly understood, and they're all believing that it's a 2 to 3 month minimum of getting towards back to business. A large percentage of them definitely see a hit this year in revenue. But a lot of them have been really focused on minimizing that impact, both with their customers and their business. Their biggest concern, of course, is the uncertainty. The first one we're going to take a look at now is landscaping. Landscaping is really unique in that this group has really felt more that it's a short-term impact. They've had delays in projects, they've had some cancellations, and they've had declines in orders, but a lot of their changes have been in the number of teams that they have and customer requests. But I just got some news right before we started that there is an uptick in landscaping that follows the seasonal trend that we see year over year. So far, it is not as strong an uptick as year over year. We'll know more by the end of April, but it's good to see that there is that uptick. Go ahead. Construction is a little different. There's a high percentage of cancellation and delay in the construction space. I think we're all seeing this, especially in this survey, because 66% of the survey respondents were in commercial construction, and they have a longer term recovery concern as expected. There's even delays that they're seeing in materials, the supply chain, et cetera, and fewer clients. The only place that we're seeing a kind of holding of construction projects is when those projects have been funded by the government and the government is not delaying or canceling. So the field service, which is the vocational workers, they're 95% essential, and they're also more focused on the short-term impact. They do see some long-term issues, but they're dealing with things in reducing hours and matching that to the 25% decrease in demand right now. But I think that there is an overall feeling that the demand will continue to build back up. And finally, transportation, some similar impacts to others. The one that I really wanted to pull out from here is that there's been a 40% reduction in employee pay across the surveyed, and there's been a lot of changes in the routines. Early on, there was a lot of demand. That's now not only plateaued, but cut back. And so there's a lot of constant change in routines. The only good news is that there's a decrease in delays due to traffic. So I think that what I'd like to do now is have Nikki join me. She's going to talk about what we're seeing on our dealer sites and our Convoy sites.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take a few minutes and talk about what we're seeing in terms of commercial vehicle buyer trends through the data and lens that we can see through Work Truck Solutions. Before I dig into that specific data, though, I wanted to take a moment and talk about just some general online shopping trends that we are seeing as a result of COVID-19. As I don't think it's a surprise to anyone here that the online shopping experience is overtaking retail over time. There's been lots of buzz in the news prior to COVID about shopping malls and big box stores hurting. The opinion of most of the experts in the industry is that online shopping is going to just advance faster and overtake retail experience shopping even faster than originally anticipated by at least 30%. So that really means that online shopping is more important for us in the commercial vehicle space. What used to be an online experience of shopping online and then moving into a store and completing that transaction educational experience, consumers are more and more looking to get all of the information they need to make that purchase decision online and have it come straight from online to in-home. Regardless of if it's automotive, just looking at B2B in general, mobile devices are dominating the online shopping experience. So that's something else really important to keep in mind when you're looking at what you're doing for your dealership. So if we can move to the next slide, Holly, thanks. So as Catherine mentioned, we have a lot of data, and I recognize I talk fast in general. So please don't hesitate to use that question feature, and we'll try to take as many questions as we can at the end. So digging into what I will call the Work Truck Solutions data, we looked across our dealer network of about 800 dealers. We also looked at our national marketplace, Convoy.com, and we also provide national vehicle locators to some of our other partners as well. So we took a time period from the first 8 weeks of the year. Oh, sorry, Holly, if you don't mind going back one. We looked at the time period December 29th through April 18th for the purpose of the next few slides in this study. And that is a week-by-week look, Sunday through Saturday. When we look at our traffic, we are calling what we see as the pre-COVID baseline, or the 8 weeks of the first 8 weeks of the year. So December 29th through February 22nd, that's where we've created our average baselines and are measuring recovery based on the activity that we see as that period. And so then, Holly, looking at our dealer traffic in isolation, not so much Convoy, but just all of our individual dealer network websites as a whole, what we see is positive traffic year over year. So when you look at January of 19 compared to January of 2020, traffic is up every month of quarter one. So that's great news. When I think about what are buyers shopping for this year, oh, sorry, Holly, if you could go back. I know we're trying to go quick. The 4 top body types of all time are listed there on the screen. I won't go through them with you, but what's interesting is looking what changed in March compared to, say, February. And what we're seeing is a lot more interest in cab chassis, cutaway van, and passenger van are big on the dealer-specific websites. And similar to what we're seeing on Convoy, which I'll show you in a minute, traffic really started to bounce back the week of March 22nd. So when we take a look at vehicle movement, this is our closest proxy to vehicle sales in our world. So we can see when a vehicle comes into inventory and moves off of inventory. So those green bars there are showing you the movement of vehicles of class 2 through 7, and we've excluded pickups from this particular chart. So we're looking at really a pure commercial look. If you look at that bright blue line at the top, that is the complete total of all classes without pickups, class 1 through 7. So that dotted line there shows you where our baseline of leads coming in are, and you can see the week of April 5th is when we started to eclipse that baseline of what we were seeing in January and February, and starting to move up above that, as you would expect to see. As Catherine mentioned, there's a lot of seasonality starting now, so we expect it to be over 100. And what's promising to me is you can see every single one of those angles and every color, looking at all the different class segments, they're all starting to move in that direction that we're wanting to look at. So good news there. And then if we move to the next section, we just want to jump into Convoy specifically and looking at Convoy traffic in isolation, which as you know, is a national marketplace. So this is our way of looking at the data with national coverage and looking strictly at organic traffic with no outside factors. So before we get into the detail of the traffic, I just want to touch base on who our audience is. Not surprisingly, it's 82% male. And when you look at the bell curve of the age, it's really age 25 to 65 makes up that large bell curve. And just want to take a moment to point out that that first half of the bell curve really is that millennial age group, and they are very much on their mobile devices and very tech savvy. 76% of our traffic to Convoy today is mobile. So this is kind of a busy chart, and I'm going to try to go fast. But again, if you have questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat window. So we looked at what we're calling earned traffic, and that means not traffic that we've paid for through Google AdWords and the like. This is really just natural organic traffic coming to our site, and that is the green bar that you can see there. Again, that dotted line showing the 100% metric is showing what we would see typically with traffic in January and February, those 8 weeks prior. So with the end of February and early March, there's a lot of industry things going on. We as a company had a lot of press and things happening, so we expected that spike to be above that 100% line. And again, you can see we dipped down. The biggest dip was the week of March 22nd. March 29th was not much better, and it just started to bounce up since March 29th. Both leads and our traffic are traveling along at the same pace as we would expect, which is great, which shows that the people that are searching on Convoy are in that lower funnel. So again, we see signs of recovery here. And even if we look at this week, just sneak peeking into the first few days of this week, it's continuing to move in the direction we're hopeful to see is, positively. So. Another point of action that I find interesting is what are people shopping for on the website? So when we look at lead submissions on Convoy, what you're looking at here are the top body types by lead volume. You can see a lot of similarities across the board. So the week of 16th through February 29th, that's pretty representative of what we see in general for the top 4 body types on Convoy. Notice that chassis cab is up there in that top 4, generally speaking. When we look at what's changing and what's different, a lot more information on rollback and records. Service utility van is high. Refrigerated body popped up into that top 4, if you will, and sleeper tractor, something else that had never been popped into the top 4 prior to COVID. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine, who would like to share some dealer tips with you.
Yeah, we always want to offer some ideas on how to actually utilize the data that we are gathering and providing. And, what comes through very, very, very clearly is to focus on customers. And so for dealers, understanding in your market area which of your customers are active, and you can be reaching out to them and letting them know that you're here for them, but also making sure that you're supporting them with accurate information and quick response. And so those are the 2 things we're going to target and focus on right now. And I really appreciate all the research that Nikki did. This is a busy slide, but we're going to walk through it because if you look at some of these averages, it is highly indicative of opportunity, is the way I like to look at it. If you're looking at the B2B average, this is all B2B, the average response is 61 hours. Holy cow. Rollick is one of our, a company that we've done some work with. They are hyper-focused in the motorsport space. They have a lead gen platform. Their lead goal and average is 1 hour. Quite a bit of difference. And then the Harvard Business Review talks about sales responsiveness in the B2B market needing to be 5 minutes. Now, this is a very broad range of goals. And so really what I wanted to do was talk a little bit to you about how you can individually create your own process. You need to set goals. You need to have consciously an idea around how you're going to take a lead. I'm not talking about how the lead gets there, where you go find it, what kind of lead, the quality or whatever, but setting your goal of having that lead and doing something with it. And what does that look like within your company? What is the process? I know that on the Work Truck Solutions platform, we have kind of an up system that dealers can design and customize, but how do you do it? Are you, who's in charge? How are you going to track response time? If you don't measure it, you cannot make it better. And if you don't motivate people by having consequences and rewards to direct the entire movement towards these goals, that's also a lost opportunity. And then constantly improving, making sure that the feedback that you get, so whether it's weekly or monthly, you should be looking at this specific KPI, key thing for you to make sure that you are getting better at it. And by the way, please, please, please don't be one of the 46% of companies that don't respond to leads. Think of leads as gold nuggets. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about today is being accurate online. That's how you build your reputation. There is nothing worse today, you know this personally, when you go to a site or you are redoing research and you end up having bad information or no information, and you've spent time and you get to a dead end. So first of all, make sure that you're communicating to customers about your current status. Use and monitor social media. I don't care which social media or how you're doing it, whether you have one person that's really good at it or as a company you have a plan. Please use it now. We are seeing highly effective results from people just being on there and posting. And of course, there's many other ways to make that efficient and effective for your goals. Make sure that your virtual showroom, which I'm describing it that way because you need to think of it that way, your inventory on your website, make sure that that inventory is accurate and that you have comprehensive details. We're all much busier and have more decisions and more fluidity right now, more concerns. If you see a vehicle that is described well and accurate, and that's going to cut down the time that you're clicking to talk to someone about that. And then finally, and this is of course a big project, but look at the kinds of vehicle purchase and financing processes that you guys can start doing virtually. And I loved, and we shared this actually during the last webinar, I loved that we already have dealers that report that they've delivered paperwork. They've got all sorts of quote and unquote virtual opportunities for somebody to just go online, ask for a vehicle and have it delivered. So make a list and then really look at that. So this is our final slide. I know we moved through this very quickly, but like I said, please make sure that you download it. And really what I wanted to leave you with before we move into our session of question and answers is opportunity. And I think I quoted last time, I'm going to quote it, Winston Churchill again, never let a good crisis go to waste. There will be winners and there will be losers. And I will tell you, this space that we are in together has so much potential for you if you grasp the opportunity by its horns. Upfitters are essential business. Most of them that I know of are up and running. They're building. States are starting to open the dealer virtual sales, not the showrooms, but their virtual sales. So the first one to be able to, identify that that's what they're good at, that's a good opportunity. And commercial just doesn't stop. The demand is there. We've got a need for everyone to look around and see how they can modernize their processes, whether it's from the supply chain side and how you place your orders and work with your suppliers through the supply chain process, to working with your customers on how to make that better listen to them and hear what could help them. That even just the listening is going to put you ahead of all the folks. We're hearing that a lot, that asking, being proactive on how you can help, even if they don't need something right now, is a huge win that will go with your relationship forward. And then finally, smart tech. We're going to talk, John's going to answer questions about telematics if you have them, but certainly things that you can be better at and understand more as you're talking to your customers and helping them be better at moving into a more digital world, right? If you can be their helper, that will be a great win for you as well. You notice the little Bloomberg social distancing wristbands that warn you if you're too close to somebody, different ideas that people are popping out with. But at that point, I do also want to remind you that in 2 weeks, we will have another webinar available for you. And Nikki, do you want to come on for just a second and talk about that before we open the questions up? And John, feel free to join now as well, too.
Sure. Thanks, Catherine, for the opportunity. So in 2 weeks, on Wednesday, May 6th, we'll be having another webinar that will focus in on marketing tips and tactics. So taking what Catherine's just shared with you and taking it a step further in social media, what can you do with Google? What can you do without spending extra advertising dollars to really improve your online experience for your customers and how to keep them engaged during this time. So
and
if
Nikki,
you can join us.
One of the pieces of data that we didn't include because we were so packed was how bargains are happening right now in the media buy world. So you'll be bringing a lot of those opportunities forward as well. So, all right. So Holly, you want to tell us what we should be answering?
All right, let me open my tiny little window here of questions. So our first, okay, well, we'll get right to it here. Why would vehicle dealers care about telematics?
John, you're on the spot.
It sounds like a question for me. So hello, everyone. Thanks for the question. So, just to define telematics, telematics uses GPS to track location, mileage, maintenance, routes taken, speeding, idling, time and attendance, right? Essentially, it's all about saving money or increasing productivity for fleet owners. And why would a dealer care? Well, two reasons. One is it's an opportunity. Telematics is an opportunity to sell through your finance office. So that's one reason. And secondly, it's inventory management, which you've heard pop up a couple times in this conversation. You can track locations of vehicles, you can track mileage, you can track maintenance on those vehicles. So those are two reasons why dealers care about telematics.
And I'd like to add that, by caring what's important to your customers, that's one of the key themes, honestly, from this webinar, right? Caring about what's important to them.
Exactly, and that's all about helping your customers save money and increase productivity. That's what telematics does for your customers.
Right. Great
Wonderful.
question.
Thank you. All right. What is the one thing I should focus on to appeal to commercial buyers?
That's a very general question, but I think we just touched on it, which is their return. When I'm talking in a B2B environment, I'm putting myself in the shoes of that customer who's doing business and trying to surface a way to help them save money or be better at getting their customers and generating more revenue. I feel free, Nikki or John, if you have anything else to add to that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, hi, I'll add to that. Thanks, Catherine. I think one thing to keep in mind, the main difference between commercial and retail is the lack of emotion surrounding the purchase, right? So in a commercial space, it's your tool, it's your money maker. You want to make sure you have the right tool for the job. And I think having that expertise and being able to communicate that to your customers, let them know that they shouldn't buy a cheaper vehicle if it's going to cost more in the long run because they're overloading it. It's a common mistake that there's lots of funny meme pictures out there on the internet where you can see lots of silly examples of that. So I think just portraying that expertise and helping ask those right questions and show that you care about what's important to them and what they're trying to do with the vehicle, I think that's key too.
I did think of one thing, which is that, as far as commercial vehicles are concerned, you may want to focus on those verticals where there's a greater demand. And seasonally, we see that there is a greater demand amongst folks like landscaping contractors, pool services. People have to clean their pools if they're opening them up. Agriculture, sure. Waste management, always a need for that. Pest control. Those are some of the ones where we see seasonal impact to demand. They're not the only ones. I'll mention also, emergency services, and that might be for a sad reason, but emergency services are not really seeing much of an impact at all from COVID. Obviously, they're seeing in terms of a decline, they're seeing basically business as usual. And when I'm talking about emergency services, I'm referring to software providers that sell their software to emergency service or first responders.
I love both of that. I think that what it reminds me is what we call salespeople in the commercial space, right, Nikki? We call them truck pros. We call them people who are the professionals that really understand for that specific unique vertical, like we're talking about. That's what's so special about the space. You need to be a little bit of an expert in you need to be an expert in a general sense, but you also need to be a little bit of an expert in each of the verticals that you're focused on.
Thank you. All right, our next question, how is Links Up different?
Sounds like for me again. So, Links Up, we are obviously a GPS provider. Telematics is all we do, right? And we are a top 10 GPS fleet tracking provider. So we have, for example, a couple 100,000 devices, GPS devices that we're tracking across the US, Canada, a part of Mexico, 45,000 customers, right? But the reason that people tend to buy from us is because we're affordable, we're easy to use, and we're located in St. Louis. We're right in the middle of the country. We're not doing our support or our development offshore somewhere. We're right smack dab in the middle of the country. So, those are some of the reasons that people tend, to buy from us, along with, as I had mentioned earlier, all of those benefits of telematics, from tracking location to maintenance to speed to idling to time and attendance, et cetera, et cetera.
I want to jump in here too and let everybody know kind of why we are friends with Links Up, because there are other telematics products out there, but they've hyper focused on huge fleets. And what John and his group have done is really not only made it affordable, but as we keep going back to these verticals, understanding them and talking to them about what would help them specifically for what they do for a living. And to me, that's what's cool about what we do. And so that's how I see you as being very different, John.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, great point.
All right. So we have, can you go back to the V recovery chart and explain that?
You bet.
So I'm gonna hold on to your seatbelts here, people. I'm gonna flip back real quick and get to, Catherine, stop me. Nope, not that one.
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay, I'm going.
Keep going. It's early on. There.
No,
so do you know if they wanted, well, I'll just talk about both of them, okay? So what's happening right now, because there's so much uncertainty, and is that people speculate. And they go back and they look at what happened at 9/11, at what happened during the big, recession 2008. What happened? Because if you guys want to have an interesting experience, look up in Wikipedia Black Swan theory. It's very interesting because what we don't have right now is a model of this ever having happened before, and it makes people crazy. You've heard bell curve many times, right? Everybody loves that there's a bell curve or something, right? They don't have it. And so people are speculating. And the way they're describing recovery is in a shape. And so one shape is an L, which we do not want to have, because an L goes down and then flat, right? Another is a swoosh, which would be down and then kind of a slow curve back up. A V-shaped recovery is what we want. It's a bounce back. It's what we're all hoping for, that we can, go through this period of time of social distancing and screeching halt of economy and then literally come out of it full bore. It's not likely that every industry, as we all know, that's going to happen for two reasons. First of all, some of them have to go out of business. So that's going to be really difficult. If you look at how this is affecting restaurants and maybe even some dealerships, it's a real challenge. Having said that, as far as certain, I guess we can go, so this is showing different countries what the forecasts are for the economies, right? And you'll see that,
No?
yeah, that's fine. We can go to that. So what we did is we said, let's go get some data from both the US GDP, so that's the bars, so that you can see the up and down in a year of where the GDP ended up. So you can see that in 2009, our GDP was down -3%. Now we're predicting a -6% in the previous slide. So that's double bad, right? So, but what we're really focused on here is how the recovery happens. And the 2008-9 recession, that was something that kind of built and happened, and there were reasons, and it was predicted a lot, and it got worse, and then, and that's not what's happening here. This is an artificial situation, which has been forced upon us in a very short time period. And so what is the result going to be in coming out of it? It could be good. It could be a V for commercial for sure. This indicates that even in a situation where it's more traditionally bad, because there's extenuating circumstances around what created that situation, that the commercial vehicle sales and commercial vehicle production will recover in a more V-shaped form. Hopefully, Holly, do you think that answered it?
I think so. It was a more general question, so I think it did. I'm not getting another, that didn't answer my question. All right. Okay. Next question. Where can we get more information on businesses least affected by COVID-19 so that we can focus on those?
That's a great question. And I think that today, with the survey that we got from John's group and some of the work that Nikki's doing and that we're looking at, we can actually build at least an initial, I guess I would call it mini report on that. And I think that that's something that over the next maybe week that we could do. And so we'll talk about posting that somewhere, and when we send out to the attendees, we'll keep you alerted to that, and probably you'll get an email that says that's available somehow. You notice I'm sitting here writing checks that I don't have to cash, right? Sorry.
Catherine, I'll just mention.
Work on it, I promise.
Okay, and I'll just mention that at Links Up, we are tracking mileage because that's what our GPS devices do.
Right.
And we're tracking it by vertical, by week. And we haven't launched it yet, but we are just gathering the data together. And this will show by vertical, where, most of the impact is. There's the seasonal component versus, March versus April versus March versus February. But then more importantly, there's the April versus April last year, and,
right.
May versus May last year. And that's what we're pulling together now. So based on mileage, we'll be able to see, hey,
that's
HVAC, suffering as much as electrical and plumbing or landscaping or whatever, because we'll have all that data. And, we work with our partners and, with Convoy to make that data available. So stay tuned.
And here's the tricky part. And I don't want to say that, and first of all, John, that's fantastic. That's really going to be valuable. But I also want to let everybody know our thoughts around their opportunity are unique to each market. And so I think that there'll be some general guidelines and some really great data, but you're going to also want to look around you at what your typical target should be as well, based upon what type of a market that you are in, whether you're urban, rural, suburban. And then the next exercise is going to be, and what is going to ultimately be the changes that take place as a result of what we're just going through. Because there will be some permanent changes. No one knows exactly what they are, but I think we're starting to get some ideas around what that might be, in addition to, as Nikki said, we're going to be way more online and way more digital, right?
Okay, next question. We are hearing about cash for clunkers happening again. If I am not mistaken, it really hurt our industry for a period of time. Do you believe it would be a good idea for this to happen again? So I'll just reread that question for you. We are hearing about cash for clunkers happening again. If I'm not mistaken, it really hurt our industry for a period of time. Do you believe it would be a good idea for this to happen again?
So Nikki, you're the one that brought forward that evil rumor.
Sure,
And of course,
I'll take this one.
And of course, that's for retail, right? Let's be really clear.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking personally, my own personal opinion here, I agree. I hope that we don't have to get to that point where we're fire saling vehicles and really hurting our residual values. I've heard it mentioned. I didn't see anything firm saying it was coming. I think it's something people, everyone's looking for ways. How do we get out of this? And I agree with you. I think that was Sean, if I'm not mistaken. I agree with you that hopefully we can avoid that situation. Makes me a little nervous to see that that's something to be talked about again.
Well, and I think that we have to understand the bifurcation between what's happening on the retail side and what's happening on the commercial side, especially during this time. This is another example of how different the economic situation is, right? There is still demand, as John's pointed out, and as we've talked about, for commercial vehicles. And so our goal, my personal goal, is to look at ways to increase the directness of the right customer getting the vehicle that they love. Because when you do that, when you make that happen, that intrinsic value of that vehicle is kept at a high level.
All right. We are just about at the 45-minute mark, so I do want to jump over. If you have more questions, please reach out to any of us, but I want to get to our contact information. Hopefully nobody's getting dizzy here. I apologize. So I wanted to kind of close out. Thank you all for your questions. If I missed any, we will provide answers to those people afterwards. But as always, it's wonderful to be a part of these webinars. I always learn so much personally, and it's great to see so many people joining. This is just fantastic. So all of our email information is there. Any final closing thoughts from our panelists? I'll go ahead and start with you, John. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, and I'll just reiterate to the question about, hey, who is perhaps hurting least, and where might there be the most sales opportunity? Landscaping, pool service, agriculture, waste management, pest control. Those are industries where, at least seasonally, are seeing their usual uptick in, maybe I shouldn't say usual, but they're seeing an uptick in demand, and therefore, they may be good ones for you to focus on. So,
wonderful. Thank you. Nikki, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. So everyone out there that's on the webinar, thank you again for joining. We are intending to continue and move forward with these as long as they seem valuable to our audience. So again, May 6th is the marketing tips on a shoestring budget webinar, but I am also looking for feedback. What are you interested in hearing about? What would you like us to have a webinar topic on? You can see my email, marketing@worktrucksolutions.com. Definitely interested in your thoughts and suggestions. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. And Catherine, to you.
Well, you know me, all I want to do is say thank you to everybody for being here, and also thank you for being part of such a special industry. If you know, for a long time now, actually 12 years now, I've been really impressed with this industry and how important it is, and I'm often surprised at how little the whole US understands about what happens in these verticals. And I guess one of my big silver linings for this horrible situation is that they're being pulled into the limelight, and that people truly are understanding how important essential businesses are to our economy. And as a result, we will get the reflection of that from the auto industry and others around how important commercial vehicles are as well. So.
All right. Thank you so much to all our panelists and all of you attendees. Until May 6th, everyone take good care, be safe, stay healthy. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.